Okay, so imagine this. You're on one of those massive cargo ships, the kind that travels up and down our rivers and canals.
Inland water transport.
Exactly. But instead of being out on the open ocean, you're deep inside the ship, down in the engine room.
The heart of the beast.
That's where you'll find the engine minder.
It's not just about liking engines, though, is it?
Right, it's a whole lot more than that.
There's a lot riding on their shoulders.
And that's what we're diving into today with RoleCatcher. They're like the ultimate guide to understanding this career path.
They've got it all laid out, the career guide, interview tips, even help with your job search.
It's like having a roadmap for your future. So whether you're already fascinated by engines or just curious about life on the water, stick around.
You might be surprised by what you learn.
I think a lot of people don't realize how much goes on behind the scenes to keep these ships moving.
It's a vital role, keeping those engines humming.
RoleCatcher calls engine minders the unsung heroes of inland water transport, right?
They are, and it's not an easy job.
No, definitely not. So what exactly does an engine minder do, according to RoleCatcher?
Well, they're responsible for the safe and efficient operation of the engines on these massive vessels.
They're like the doctors of the ship, making sure everything's running smoothly.
Except instead of a stethoscope, they've got a wrench in hand.
That's a good way to put it. And it sounds like it takes a certain kind of person to handle that kind of pressure.
Absolutely. RoleCatcher makes it clear that this isn't a job for the faint of heart.
You're dealing with powerful machinery, sometimes in challenging conditions.
And you can't exactly pull over to the side of the river if something goes wrong.
No kidding. So what kind of personal qualities would make someone a good fit for this kind of work?
Well, RoleCatcher stresses the importance of a solid background as an ordinary crew member. You need to understand how the whole ship operates.
So it's not like you just jump straight into the engine room.
Right, you've got to pay your dues, learn the ropes, literally.
Right, right.
They also emphasize the need for someone who's comfortable with physical work, long hours, and a certain degree of risk.
You're on the water, often in unpredictable conditions.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
for everyone, that's for sure.
It takes a certain breed.
It does.
But for those who are drawn to it, it sounds like an incredibly rewarding career.
It can be.
But let's be real, it's not all sunshine and calm waters. RoleCatcher doesn't shy away from the challenges.
No, they don't. And that's a good thing. It's important to go in with your eyes wide open.
Exactly. So let's talk about some of those challenges, those pros and cons that RoleCatcher highlights. What really stood out to you?
Well, one thing that immediately jumped out at me was the salary. It's surprisingly good, especially for someone just starting out.
Really? Even for entry-level positions?
Even then, RoleCatcher mentions that the demand for skilled engine minders is high, which means companies are willing to pay a premium for the right people.
That makes sense. I mean, it's a specialized skill set and there's a lot of responsibility involved.
Exactly. And it's not just the salary that's appealing. RoleCatcher also points out the job security in this field. Once you've got your foot in the door and you've proven yourself, there's a good chance you'll have steady work for years to come.
Especially with inland water transport on the rise.
Right. People are realizing how efficient and environmentally friendly it can be.
So you've got good pay, job security. It sounds almost too good to be true. What's the catch?
Well, like we said, it's not all smooth sailing.
What did RoleCatcher say about the downsides?
The biggest one, and they're upfront about this, is the lifestyle. It's demanding.
In what way?
You're often working long hours, sometimes in challenging conditions.
We're talking about being away from home for extended periods.
Exactly. RoleCatcher talks about how you might be gone for weeks or even months at a time, depending on the route and the company.
That's definitely something to consider. It's not just about the work itself, it's about the lifestyle that comes with it.
And that's not for everyone. You need to be comfortable with that kind of separation, that kind of isolation.
And then there's the whole physical aspect of the job.
Right, you're on your feet a lot, often in cramped and noisy environments. It can be physically demanding work.
RoleCatcher even mentions the potential dangers of working with heavy machinery and being exposed to the elements.
It's not without its risks. And they're upfront about that.
So it sounds like you really need to weigh the pros and cons carefully before diving into this career.
Absolutely.
But for those who are up for the challenge, for those who are drawn to the water and have a knack for mechanics, it sounds like it could be an incredibly rewarding path.
It can be a good life, but it's not for everyone.
So let's say someone's listening to this and they're intrigued. They're thinking, okay, this sounds like something I could see myself doing. What would be the first step on their engine minder journey?
I'd say the first step is understanding the career path itself.
Yeah.
And that's where RoleCatcher really shines. They break it down into stages.
Stages.
Yeah, so you know what to expect as you progress.
Okay, so walk us through those stages. What does that career ladder look like, according to RoleCatcher?
Sure. They start with the entry-level position, the first rung on the ladder. The entry-level position, the first rung on the ladder, is the deckhand.
Ah, so you're not jumping straight into the engine room.
Not quite.
Makes sense. You got to learn the ropes somewhere, right?
Exactly. You're getting your sea legs, as they say, learning how the whole ship operates from bow to stern.
Okay, so what does a deckhand actually do on a day-to-day basis?
Well, from what I gathered from RoleCatcher, it's a bit of everything. It's a very hands-on role.
Like a jack of all trades.
Precisely. Handling mooring lines, assisting with cargo operations, cleaning and maintaining the deck.
Sounds like they're involved in those emergency drills too, right?
Absolutely. Safety is paramount on these vessels. Deckhands play a vital role in ensuring everyone knows what to do in case of an emergency.
Okay, so it's physically demanding. You're learning about all aspects of the ship. Where does the engine part come in?
Well, RoleCatcher highlights how deckhands often get involved in basic engine maintenance, under supervision, of course.
So it's like a sneak peek into the engine room, a chance to show your interest.
Exactly. And to start picking up some of those essential skills. They're not just swabbing the deck all day.
Right, right. It's all part of the learning process.
Exactly. And that's what's great about this career path. It's very hands-on. You're learning by doing.
So you've put in your time as a deckhand, you've proven yourself. What's the next step up?
That's when you move on to junior engine minder. This is where the real engine work begins.
Ah, so this is where you get your hands dirty, so to speak.
Literally. You're working directly with the engine systems under the guidance of a more experienced senior engine minder.
What kind of responsibilities does a junior engine minder have, according to RoleCatcher?
Well, they talk about conducting routine checks on the engine, assisting with troubleshooting.
So really getting to know the ins and outs of how everything works.
Exactly. It's about building that foundational knowledge.
And probably using some pretty impressive tools along the way.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about massive wrenches, specialized diagnostic equipment, the whole 9 yards.
That's got to be pretty cool, getting to work with that kind of machinery.
It's definitely a unique work environment. And as you progress, those responsibilities only get more complex.
So what comes after junior engine minder? Is it just engine minder?
Nope. The top rung, the pinnacle of this career path, is the senior engine minder.
So that's like the boss of the engine room.
You could say that. You're calling the shots down there, overseeing all aspects of the engine operations.
Sounds like a lot of responsibility.
It is. And RoleCatcher emphasizes that leadership aspect.
What do you mean?
Well, at that level, you're not just responsible for the engines themselves, but for the people working on them as well.
So there's a mentoring element to the role as well.
Exactly. You're training new crew members, mentoring those junior engine minders, making sure everyone's up to speed.
So it's about passing on that hard-won knowledge.
And ensuring the smooth operation of the entire engine department.
It's interesting, you don't always think about the leadership aspect of a job like this. You think about the technical skills, the hands-on work.
Right, but those people skills, they're essential as you climb the ranks.
Especially in a high-pressure environment like an engine room.
Exactly. You need to be able to think clearly, communicate effectively, and inspire confidence in your team.
Speaking of skills, RoleCatcher has a whole section in their guide about skills and knowledge for aspiring engine minders. What are some of the key things they highlight? They really do emphasize that continuous learning aspect, don't they?
Absolutely. It's not a learn it once and you're good kind of field.
Makes sense. Things are always changing, new technologies, new regulations.
Exactly. And a good engine minder, they're not just keeping up, they're staying ahead of the curve.
So where do you even begin to learn about all of that? I mean, beyond the on-the-job training, of course.
Well, RoleCatcher actually has some great suggestions for that. They talk about attending industry conferences.
Networking, meeting other professionals.
Right. Sharing knowledge and experiences. They also mention subscribing to trade publications, staying updated on the latest advancements.
It's about being a lifelong learner.
Exactly. And that's something I really appreciate about RoleCatcher. They emphasize that growth mindset. It's not just about what you know now, it's about your willingness to keep learning and adapting.
Which brings us to an interesting point. RoleCatcher also has a section on alternative titles and adjacent career guides. What's that all about?
I'm glad you brought that up. It's for those who might be intrigued by the skills we've discussed, but maybe the life of an engine minder isn't the perfect fit.
So what are some of those alternative paths? What else can you do with these skills?
Well, RoleCatcher suggests exploring roles like marine mechanic, for example.
That makes sense. Still working with engines, but maybe not always at sea.
Exactly. You could also look into becoming a ship duty engineer, which is a shore-based position.
So you're still connected to the maritime industry, but in a different capacity?
Right. And there are even opportunities further afield, believe it or not.
Like what?
Think about it. You've got this incredible understanding of complex machinery. You're a master troubleshooter. You can handle pressure. Those skills are valuable in a lot of industries.
That's a good point. It's about those transferable skills, those core competencies that can take you in all sorts of directions.
Exactly. And I think that's something people often overlook when they're considering their career options.
It's not always a straight line. Sometimes it's about the journey, the skills you pick up along the way.
And those skills, they can open doors you never even knew existed.
Well said. So, as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of engine minders, what would be the one key takeaway you'd want our listeners to remember?
I'd say this. If you're curious about something, explore it. Don't be afraid to dive in and learn more. You never know where it might lead you.
That's great advice. And for those interested in the engine minder path specifically, or just exploring the vast world of maritime careers, RoleCatcher is an incredible resource. Be sure to check them out. And with that, until next time, keep those engines running.